Hello, this is Brett Knowles from PM Squared Consulting. In this final video, I'd like to walk you through the benefits that typical large power distribution companies enjoy by updating their planning process through these 5 quick wins that we've been describing in the previous videos, and ultimately updating their planning software to something that's a little bit more contemporary and supports what is called Agile Planning. So there's a couple of key benefits that we see. First, if we take a look at looking at the ability to change the plan over time. In the traditional planning mode, where senior leadership agrees to the strategy and then the top level FP&A numbers, there's limited ability to change that plan while the planning process is underway without having to restart the entire planning process. But in Agile Planning, where the first step is we get agreement at the top level, then we get agreement at the next level, then we do the rough cut plans and so forth, you can incorporate a new goal or target at any point in time with minimal disruption. So if we choose to change one of our priorities partway through the planning process, literally by dumping in that planning, that new number, we can identify the new drivers and then redo that part of the plan. So our ability to change is significantly better. If we take a look at the visibility of the plan, in the traditional world, there's kind of no visibility. Once the strategy's been cut and is sent to FP&A, it's invisible until the plans are finally finished. Whereas in the Agile world, at every milestone, you get a recheck. So I do the corporate plan, recheck. I do the cascade level plans, strategy maps, recheck. Do the driver analysis, recheck. Do the rough cut plan, recheck, and so forth. So the idea is you've got complete visibility throughout the process, and that's one of the key things that cuts the cycle time down, because I don't expend a huge amount of energy on a part of the plan that is then thrown out. In terms of the value to the business, in other words, the learning that goes on within the business unit, with the traditional planning, there's not much learning until the plan is cut. And then we actually can incorporate what the plan says and use that to build a business unit. Whereas in this world, as we learn about the rough cut corporate strategy, I learn a bit more. As I figure out our rough cut priorities, I learn a bit more. As I figure out our rough cut drivers, I learn a bit more. So what ends up happening is the benefit occurs to the business unit throughout the planning process. It's not a tool where we invest a huge amount of hours and get nothing out of it for 16 weeks. At each week, we have a significant milestone that shows knowledge at the business unit level. Finally, if we take a look at risk. So risk over time, once we cut the plan, strategy, and top-level numbers, there's no reduction in risk until we actually have the new plan out. In other words, there's nothing that makes the business exposed to less risk during the planning process. Whereas in Agile Planning, the risk decreases quickly because we have an agreement that provides a foundation for shifting it later if need be. But more importantly, because we're making incremental knowledge gains, we're eliminating risk with each step. Okay, we have the strategy right. Okay, we have the priorities right. Okay, we have the drivers right. Okay, we've got the target numbers right. So the risk decreases quickly throughout the planning process. And that gives us a mix of, the ideal world. If we take a look at business value versus risk, we see risk going down, business value going up. And that's what is so attractive about this Agile planning process. It's one of these things that we couldn't do without the cloud-based technology that we currently have. Now that we have that capability, it seems nuts to do planning any other way. So the benefits, net, on average, and we've done a fair amount of research. We presented this at a number of conferences. We see about a 61% lower cost to do the plans. We see on average a 93% less errors in the plan. We see a 40% reduction in staff to cut the plan. And we see about a 25% faster process. Now this is across all organizations, not just the 5 utilities that we've been focusing in on. So it gives us a bunch of other benefits that in the broader world, a lot of external research has validated our numbers. So for example, there's almost a 60% increased likelihood that we'll have a plus or minus 5% accuracy within the original assumptions. We have a 62% increased likelihood to complete the budget in 2 or fewer iterations. Remember, we're starting off with an average of 6. We have about 145% improved likelihood to have near real-time data available throughout the year because we've reduced the number of planning elements and we're basing it on real live activities. We see that there's a significant reduction in the planning and forecasting cycle times, 65% increase in your availability to actually do analysis of the financial results as opposed to producing another report or running the planning process, and about a 30% increase in the forecast reliability based on those indexes we described. So that is the conclusion of our presentation called Planning Best Practices for Power Distribution Companies. And again, I want to emphasize that best practices are entirely based on what you and your organization needs and can do. So this was intended to be a long list of things for you to consider, some of which will offer significant value to your organization. It's important to note that we've described these as quick wins, which you can do currently, and we'd be happy to help you do any one of those wins. In conjunction, they give you even bigger benefits, and I need to emphasize that all of these are actually easily incorporated with an upgrade to your planning solution to not only give you the quick wins, but give you a more stable base on which to run your planning process going forward. I'd enjoy hearing from any of you about any questions or observations, more detail on the data that we've used and the analysis we've done, or any other advice we can provide. Thanks for your time.